Greetings, everyone. We are live. It's Wadjet here. And I decided to do a live stream today because I wanted to talk about shadow work. So, the topic is, are you afraid of shadow work? If so, then you want to stay tuned because this is something that I come across a lot in the work that I do. I am an intuitive wellness coach and a spiritual mentor, cosmic energy healer. And this is something that I notice um, people tend to get a little uneasy about when it comes to shadow work. So, what is shadow work? Shadow work is an aspect of yourself that you are not aware of. It's the aspect of yourself that is unconscious, that's in your subconscious. Sometimes it's referred to as like your dark side, but when I think of dark side, it's not always this evil thing. And that's one of the reasons why people tend to be afraid of shadow work, because they think shadow work is evil. And let me know in the comments what you have heard or what your perspective is on shadow work. Is it something that you are afraid of? Hey, Shayna, let me know kind of what your thoughts are there, because this tends to be a big misconception that shadow work is this evil thing, and it's really not. It doesn't have to be. Now, the thing is, when it comes to what's good or what's evil, what's bad, and what does that even mean? It's really a spectrum. And when it comes to shadow work, there are things that can feel negative or can be very low vibrating, things about yourself that you don't like, that you don't want to deal with, that you avoid, the aspects of yourself that you feel shameful about, or that you feel doubt or anger towards. Those things also reside in the shadow aspect of yourself, especially if it's something that things that you kind of tuck away, things that you don't even realize are a thing. It just kind of ends up in this shadow aspect of yourself because you're not at a point where you are ready to deal with it. So it stays in this unknown place within your subconscious. It's the most beautiful side of myself. I love it. I just get irritated with the vague explanation of shadow work. Like, is it just asking yourself questions or waiting to receive the answer? Well, my perspective with shadow work is, it's an aspect of you, and it's because it's unconscious, because it's a subconscious aspect of yourself. You have to get to a point where you're ready to become aware of it. And there are questions that you can ask. And when I say yourself, right, you can ask yourself, but it's not yourself like your ego self. You're connecting to a part of yourself that is not in your physical body. And I kind of talk about this in the last video that I did, when it comes to this inner aspect of yourself, your spiritual self, your non-physical self. In the same way, we have our physical bodies, we have other energy bodies. And these bodies are not contained in us. Our body is just a catalyst for these different energy bodies. So, and I'm sharing this from the point of the energy work that I do. And this is kind of how I tend to see it. Now, you might have different language around it, but like if you ask yourself a question and you're just asking your ego self, that's not your shadow self, because your ego self is very present. It's very much in the present state. It's very much in a part of your conscious state. And your ego tries to keep you separate from your shadow. Because when you deal with stuff within the shadow, now this is something that can be conflicting to your ego. Your ego wants you to stay the same a lot of times. The shadow stuff, that's where the real healing happens. That's where that's where the pain is. That's where the truth is. So I never say I'm a light worker. I always say I'm a shadow worker, because that is where when you start to draw out those things that are in the shadow, in the subconscious, in the unconscious, and you bring it to light, right? Now you can see it for what it truly is. Now you're assessing these things, but you can't do that in the light first. You have to sort it out. You have to find it within the subconscious self. So I hope that answered your question. Because a lot of times, if you're just asking in the mind, you're going to get a very mind-based answer. So how can you tell the difference? You tend to feel it. It feels different. And if you stay tuned for some future videos, I'll be talking more about shadow work, and eventually I'll be doing a workshop on it as well, because this is something where I notice people get stuck. So if you're in your mind asking shadow questions, then it tends to kind of just stay in the mind. Or think about, if you're thinking about it, where is it stemming from? Where do you feel it? If it's coming from a shadow place, you really do have to feel it versus just think about it. It has to be this full embodiment versus just being very logical about it. Being logical about stuff that's happening within the shadow self is very 3D. It keeps you very much in the earthly realm, and you want to move beyond that when it comes to accessing the shadow self. Now, what happens what if you're afraid, or you've tried to access the shadow and you have really experienced some type of trauma, some type of traumatic event that has really left you at a point where you're afraid of it because you don't want to relive certain experiences. This is kind of like a traumatic loop. And again, when it comes to something that is linked to your shadow self, but you're in this traumatic loop, then it's something that you're going to constantly fear. But you have to address the root of the fear and think of it less as, see, here's the thing. Fear feeds off of you. It feeds off of your energy, and you have these different type of energies and entities that will feed off of that low vibrating energy. They will feed off of fear. And if you're in that loop, it's going to keep being a cycle, and you want to find the source of it. So that includes shadow work. But shadow work doesn't have to be something that you jump right into. It doesn't have to be something where it's this sudden kind of shock to your body, to your emotions, to your spirit. It doesn't have to be that way. And it's something that can really come from it comes from a place of truth, but it can also come from a place of love. It can come from a place of feeling very grounded. And that's something, when you are doing shadow work, you want to be at a point energetically and emotionally where you are grounding yourself and you're ready to receive the truth, ready to get to the root. You have to be ready to go within yourself. Shadow work is something that is not an external thing. It's all something that is within you. So when I talk about these different energy bodies and these different fields and realms, I'm kind of bringing my arms out like this, but everything, you have to go within yourself first in order to experience those different realms, those different aspects of yourself. It's all about going within. It's never something that is external from you. And that's another thing, that's another reason why people fear shadow work, because it's like something's out to get you. Something's going to attack you. And that's really not the case. It can feel like something's, if it feels like something is going to attack you or something's out to get you, that might not be. Now, I'm not saying that there's not something that might be out to get you or that's trying to attack you, because there are entities, there are beings out there that do attack. People do get spiritually attacked. I've been spiritually attacked before, many times actually. But that has nothing to do with your shadow self. That's a whole different thing. And when you're thinking about something outside of yourself and something coming to get you, that's not your shadow. That could be a reflection of something that you have experienced and it's manifesting in this physical realm. That can be a thing. But when it comes to your shadow self and you doing shadow work, the only thing that would be out to get you is you. It's you against yourself when it comes to shadow work. And this is something where if you want to start this process, you really have to look at, are you afraid to do the work? Are you afraid of the responsibility that the truth of what you find will carry? And this is a big part, because once you know an aspect of yourself, once you know this truth that can come forward through doing shadow work, what are you going to do with that truth? Because that's where the real work will really happen, is when you receive the truth, when you understand where the root cause of the pain, of the trauma, of the lack of productivity. It doesn't always have to be, traumatic or sad. It could be you're not being productive. It could be you're not happy. It could be anger. Whatever those things are, once you bring to your consciousness what that source is, what are you going to do about it? Are you just going to hold on to it, or are you going to actually start doing the work? Because the real work begins once you actually access those true things, those truths. Where you go from there. A lot of people are afraid to do that work. The spiritual journey is not one that is easy. It looks great. It looks great on paper, though. Looks great on paper. Okay. And in Instagram posts, but in real life, it's not, it's not a bunch of just, meditating and lighting candles. It's really navigating the inner dynamic of yourself, the inner connectedness of the mind, the body, the spirit. It's a whole process. And it's okay if you're not at a point where you want to deal with all of that. It's not something that you have to do right now or right away. Shadow work is going to be there for you whenever you're ready to deal with it. You also don't have to deal with it alone. You can work with a mentor or a coach or in a group or something like that. But even though, you can do that, one thing I want to inspire you to do is really start to at least understand what it means for you. Because if you are still kind of uneasy about things, then you really want to get to a point where you have a better understanding, which is why I wanted to do this video. You have a better understanding for yourself. And the things that I'm sharing with you might not resonate with you, and that's totally fine. You just need to find what does. There are many different ways to do things, and you have to find what works for you. And I would encourage you to start exploring what that is. You can do all the Google searches, you can read all the books, you can watch all the documentaries, but what feels true for you when it comes to where you're at on your journey and what you're ready to do? What are you being guided to start doing now? If you're at a point where you are wanting to heal, you're needing to clear things out, you're needing to declutter, which is something I'll be talking about in future videos, then this is a great time to start doing shadow work. If you're ready to release, we have a full moon coming up, I believe, next week. So that's a great time if you're into using moon phases. A great time to do shadow work is when you're during a full moon or in that full moon energy where you're doing some release work. It's really about connecting to those aspects of yourself that it forces you to go deeper. You can't, shadow work is not shallow. Let me say that again. Shadow work is not shallow. It's something that is deeply seated, and you have to do some digging. You have to move beyond the denial. You have to move beyond the things that have just kept you in a state of just avoiding all the things. It's often those things that, have you ever found yourself to be just, you're alone, you're not distracted, you're just alone with your thoughts, and you're alone with your feelings. And those things that you tend to run away from and that you try to avoid and you try to just keep yourself distracted from, they start to kind of creep up, start to well up into your throat a little bit, or you start to hear that little voice of like that nagging feeling of like, okay, it's time to do something different. It's time to do something better or something bigger. But you can't get to that bigger or better thing until you deal with the thing that's keeping you stuck in the first place. That's where the shadow work is. It's in that stuckness. There's something to uncover there. It's in those moments and those feelings of not knowing which way to go. And shadow work doesn't have to be this really hard thing. Shadow work can be something that is accessible. I want shadow work to be accessible because you all have the power to do that. And it's really important for you to just be open to what your healing can be, because healing promotes growth. And if there's any parts of yourself, which we all have parts of ourselves that need healing, and healing comes in cycles. It's not like, okay, I've done this shadow work and this one time and I'm healed and I'm good to go for the rest of my life. It don't work that way. You're there, okay. So yeah, if you're at that point, and I feel like with everything that's been going on in the world and then this time of year, this is a great time to just start to acknowledge that something is there that's stiff or that's kind of heavy or damp. Something is there. Sometimes it's like a churning. And it's like, just acknowledge that something is there. If you're afraid right now, and you're not at a point where you don't want to know what's there, just acknowledge that something's there. That's the first step. Okay. If you're afraid of shadow work and you're not ready to actually do the work, the first step for you is just to acknowledge that something's there. And sometimes that's all you need for a while. And that takes you through a whole season. The Queen of Mankind says, yes, I agree. Shadow work is, yes, cyclical. Absolutely. Healing is messy. Yes, it is. And I actually talked about on the last 2 episodes of the first season of my podcast, which is Fit Body, Fit Spirit. In that season, I talk about honoring in those episodes, I talk about honoring the season that you're in. And I'll be sure to link those, link my podcast in the description of this after the stream is over, in case you're interested in checking it out, because season 2 is coming. Season 2 of the podcast starts next month, the first week of December. So stay tuned for that. But, oh, it's Anita. Oh, hey. Yes. So, with the seasons, there are times in the year where you might feel ready to do that deep healing, clearing, cleansing work. And just honor that. Sometimes it's situational. Sometimes it's seasonal. It just varies. And this is why it's so important for you to be in tune with your body, to be in alignment of the mind, the body, and the spirit. And shadow work it helps bring those pieces together. Because the more that you start to find those pieces and you start to mend and heal those pieces, which is not going to happen overnight. Hey, Samari, it's not going to happen overnight. Shadow work is not a rush job. It's something that requires your full attention. It's something that requires time and dedication. How dedicated are you to your healing journey? Not everything is going to be love and light. I am very not that. I am not the love and light chick. So that doesn't mean that I don't honor those aspects. That's just not the feature. The real work happens within that shadow stuff, in that all of that stuff, the messy stuff. And if 2020 has taught us anything, it's that, like, this, is it just me, or has this whole year just been a mess? This whole year is shadow work. This whole year is just messy. Like, seriously, you want to get to a point where you acknowledge that something is there. And so I mentioned that shadow work is, dealing with the aspects of yourself that are in your unconscious or your subconscious. So when I'm saying that, acknowledge that something is there will be a response. There's going to be a physical response to certain things. You'll have certain triggers. And these triggers are like these emotional reactions to certain situations or experiences. And you might have very strong reactions. And these reactions kind of trigger these areas within your subconscious or your unconscious that has weight, that is stuff in there. And it's like, okay, this is a trigger for something that you need to go deeper with. 2020 shadow work, yes. But much needed shadow work for the entire world. Absolutely. Yes. So this is a great opportunity, using this time between, and and I'll be talking about shadow work over the next few months. Well, I'm always going to talk about shadow work, but you'll be seeing me talk about this more around this time as we transition into to winter and things like that. Like, I feel like this is a good time for some people. It is for me. And so that's usually the time I start talking about it. And, you have to start paying attention to what your triggers are. What things tend to trigger a very significant emotional reaction out of you? Where does that stem from? Most likely, there is some form of shadow work that is attached to that very strong emotional trigger. And I've seen it. And sometimes it's not an emotional trigger. Sometimes it's a physical response. Sometimes it's like literally, I see this a lot in the gut area, in the womb, solar plexus area. That carries a lot of, at least from the energy work that I've done over the years, a lot of people carry a lot of their residue, as I like to call it, their trigger points are in those areas. Also, I've seen them all over. That tends to be the common areas. Those tend to be the common areas. Also in, so I mentioned the solar and the womb area, the sacral chakra area, but also in the throat chakra, in the heart chakra. Those are big ones as well. But your chakras are not the only places where you have trigger points that create that are these like signals to areas that need to be addressed in the shadow. I keep like pushing back here because I'm just thinking of it as like, we have this whole field around us, and how I tend to see it when I'm doing energy work, or even just when I'm, just seeing energy. It's like I see it as this field, and literally like these little, like a neurological response, a synapses actually is kind of what it's like. I found out that I'm ending lifetimes of hurt. I was a king once, and my kingdom was taken via betrayal, and I was beheaded in front of my people. I'm going through a similar situation now. I am glad that you're at a point where you are ending those lifetimes of hurt. So that is great. And so during this time, you going through that similar situation now, this is a great opportunity. So I encourage you to look at the opportunity of this situation being presented for you. I'm also in a situation of like, there's another cycle that's coming back around. It's like, okay, the first time it's like, this has happened before. Now I need to take what I remember and what I learned from the last experience, whether that last experience was last year or 10 lifetimes ago or in another galaxy. It doesn't matter when you receive the lesson, you have to draw it into this reality, draw it into the present time, and take that and then look at it with a new sense of awareness, and looking at, well, what didn't I do, or what did I do? What needs to be shifted this time around so I can close this chapter? So something to be mindful of. Thank you for sharing that, Shayna, because, as I mentioned before, these things come around in different seasons, different cycles, and sometimes it can take some lifetimes. It can take some years, some months, or whatever to fully clear certain aspects of the shadow, to heal from those things. Sometimes it can take time. So it's not a rush job. If you are looking for someone, if you're looking to do like for a quick fix, or you want somebody that can give you like little quick hacks to like hurry up and heal, I am not the one for that. It's a lifelong process. It's a lifelong journey. And, think about how long it took to just get to the point of pain and suffering and trauma, and how long you sat with that, how many lifetimes, how many years you sit with it, you hold on to it, it calcifies in your energetic field, and you just want to hurry up and fix it. It don't work that way. Shayna Gut is dealing with lifetimes of stuff that's clearing out, which is amazing. When you are starting to notice these things from past lifetimes are coming up, that's starting to clear up, that means now you're pulling out the duffel bags, the 40-gallon trash bags. Now you're really doing some deep work, which is great. That's how you know you're really making some significant progress. And you are going to start experiencing this type of energetic weight loss, as I like to call it. Samari says, fall and winter is a great time to go within. Yes, till the soil, absolutely. To prepare for spring, new beginnings, plant new seeds. Yes. And I am an advocate of spring being the true new year. I always refer to January as the calendar year, but what resonates with me, what my truth is that spring is the true new year. And I'm very much an advocate of following the seasons. And everybody has a different timeline for seasons. And so, be mindful of that. And I do agree, definitely a great time to go within. The winter, I use that time a lot, especially the late fall going into winter. I do a lot of shadow work during that time, which is why I tend to talk more about shadow work, why I start offering workshops and courses and things like that on shadow work, because that's usually time that I'm doing it. But no matter if you're watching this replay and it's summertime might be somebody else's time to do shadow work. And if that's your time to do shadow work, do your shadow work in the summertime. Everybody's different. Some people might get more energy. You might have more energy in the wintertime. Other people might hibernate in the summertime. And I've come across people like that too. Because you have to remember, we are beings here, like these physical bodies are on this earth, but we extend from all across the galaxies, like the multiverse. And so you are from many places. You are not just from here. So if for any of you that feel off, like you feel like you're trying to follow a certain timeline that doesn't resonate with you, and this is where this calendar time comes in, right? It doesn't make sense to me personally. There's so much activity that goes on, all these holidays and stuff that happen in the wintertime, which really does not make sense with the season of winter, or like, it's like there's a lot of activity, there should be less activity, but that's just me. I just think it's very strange. And it's something that I learned, I realized over time. I was like, this doesn't resonate with me. There was a time where it did resonate, and where I was very big on celebrating the calendar year, celebrating the new year of January. But over time, those things changed as my awareness shifted, as my spiritual journey expanded. So it doesn't matter where you're at on your journey. Whatever you believe about shadow work, whatever you believed about healing at one point, that might start to shift for you now. You might be at a point where you're starting to become more open-minded, or you're willing to learn a different perspective that you might not have originally agreed with or wanted to hear about. So just something to keep in mind. Wherever you're at, an aspect of healing is also allowing yourself to challenge your previous beliefs, challenge your current mindset and your mind frame, your mindset and the time frames of things. Those things can adjust and grow and expand just as you do. That doesn't necessarily make you wrong. That's just where you were at that time. When I think back to the different times in my life where I had a certain belief, I had a certain awareness or understanding, that was my truth then. And it got me to that point, and I learned something different, or something shifted and something else resonated with me. And then that changed. So it's like what used to resonate with me, that shifted. So that's okay too. And that's also a part of really just being open to how you allow yourself to grow, how you allow yourself to heal, how you allow yourself to move throughout your spiritual and personal journey. Because I do feel like it's one and the same. Your personal growth journey, your spiritual journey, I do feel like it's they go hand in hand. And so all these things that we've been talking about when it comes to being afraid of shadow work, when it comes to what shadow work is, or what could possibly, what are some of those signals that could be a sign for you to, like, okay, it's time to start doing some work. I need to dig a little bit deeper. When it comes to those things, you have to be at a point where you're open to see what else is there. Because something that you logically believe is your truth might be different when you do the shadow work. And this has happened, and this is from personal experience. There have been plenty of times where I was like, I'm thinking this is what it is. In my mind, in my ego, this is what it is. But when I dig deeper, when I really pull from that unconscious state, it's like, oh, wait a minute. That's telling me something different. That feels different. What is that about? So then I have to challenge the ego and the shadow. The ego versus the shadow. Who's going to win? And I think it's less about winning and more about what resonates. What do you gain and what do you lose? Many people are afraid of doing shadow work because there is a fear of what you might lose. Samari says, yes, I agree. Certain things no longer resonate with me as I grew. My major shadow work has to do with my relationship with people. Yes. Ooh, Samari. Tell it like it is, child. The relationship with people. Oh man, that's a whole, I could do a whole series on just that part. On just that part of your the relationship with people, and how that can change, and how that can just, how you really get to see people. Ooh, how you see people differently, and how you see yourself differently when you start to do that shadow work. And you see the triggers. You will see there will be people in your life that are solely there to trigger you. That's all they're there for. And these can be family members. This could be your partner. This could be life partners, business partners, spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, brother, sister, cousin, neighbor, boss, co-worker, pet, whatever. They are only there to trigger you. And it's like, are you just going to keep getting triggered and just reacting and just keep being, being in that loop of being triggered and then just reacting, but then you're not doing anything to break out of that? That's where the shadow work is. That's where the shadow work is. That's where the shadow work is. And what I mentioned about this last point I want to make about why people are afraid of shadow work, when it comes to being afraid of what you might lose, especially when it comes to people, right? Are you afraid that if you start healing, if you start shifting, if you become better, that you're going to leave people behind. You're going to feel guilty for walking away, or you know that if you start doing this work that now you're not going to align with these people in your life, that you're going to have to let them go, or you're not going to be able to have the same conversations with them. Or you might consciously know that you are in a relationship that is toxic, or that's just keeping you, that's really just holding you back. I have been in relationships, and by being in relationships, I'm not saying they have to be romantic relationships, any type of relationships. So I'm talking about friendships, just family dynamic. Just because they're your family doesn't mean, like, you can love them from afar. But just because they're your family doesn't mean that they are good for you. Sometimes it is the people that are closest to you that will literally be like just a big ass just brick, um, uh, like what are those things? A straight jacket, just keep you bound up to where you just cannot move, like you cannot breathe, like literally suffocating you, suffocating your spirit, suffocating your ability to heal yourself. Are you afraid to let go of that? Are you afraid of losing that person because you're going to feel guilty, or because you think they're going to make you feel guilty, or because you're afraid to be alone? Are you afraid of that? Because that's a thing. If there is any type of, well, you know, hesitation around that, or questioning around, like looking at what you are going to lose, that's one of the biggest ones when it comes to shadow work, because you're forced to deal with the truth. Now, you decide what you're going to do with it, but once you know about it, now you're stuck with that too. What I would encourage you to do is start to look at who you get to become and what you gain once you allow yourself to become the better version of yourself. Yep, that was the hardest for me, losing people and feeling guilty about it. Oh yeah. And there have definitely been people in my life where they have made me feel guilty. They've tried to manipulate my emotions, and I had to be, here's the thing. Another part of shadow work is accepting your role in the dysfunction, is accepting your role in the toxicity. It's not just them, it's you too. Let me say that again. It's not just them, it's you too. Okay? You play a role. So there were times where I had to accept the fact that I was an enabler. I was enabling this behavior. And that did not feel good to have to realize that about myself. It's way easier to be the victim. Man, it's like, can I just be the victim? Can I just be that and just be like, oh, you're attacking me. Oh, you're the bad person. It's like, no. You got to be the one that you have helped create this. a toxic synergy, if you will. And that doesn't always feel good, So have you experienced that? Are you going through that now? Right? That's part of shadow work. When I really did some digging, it's like, it ain't just her. It ain't just him. It's you. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Okay. What is your role in it? Because once you acknowledge, so I talked about the first thing you can do if you're starting to, if you are afraid and you're not ready to actually deal with the stuff. I mentioned the first thing you can do is just acknowledge that something is there. Just sit with that. Just sit with that. Right? When you point a finger at someone, there are 3 fingers pointing back at you. Absolutely. Going through it now. Yes, not creating boundaries was my toxic behavior. Absolutely, man. The boundaries thing. And I've talked about boundaries before on not on YouTube yet, on other channels, which I will start doing more videos around that as well. But yeah, you have to look at your role in your pain, in your trauma, in the dysfunction, and then also in what you're willing to let go of. So that last thing that I mentioned, right? After you've done the acknowledging and you're ready to start exploring more about what shadow work is for you and just being open to it, that's that second part. The third part is like, okay, where's this fear of letting go? What am I afraid to let go of? Once you start to look at why you're afraid to let go, find the root of that, then start looking at, well, who do I get to become? What do I gain from letting this go? And sometimes this could be the most challenging part, because the things we can talk about what we want all day, every day. Oh, I want this, and oh, I wish I had that, and I wish I had that. But what are you actually doing to get that? To align yourself with that? You can't hold on. I can't hold on to this mouse here. I can't hold on to this. And it's like, if this is the hand I'm supposed to receive my abundance in, but I'm holding on to this thing that I'm supposed to let go of, how can I receive my abundance? I can't. I can't receive my healing. I can't receive my abundance until I let this go. You literally have to let it go to open yourself up to more opportunities. I actually made a post on Facebook about, out with the old, in with the new. I shared a post about that. Like, what are you letting go of? I'm in like another phase of decluttering. I've been decluttering for years. I'm a very slow declutterer. I just got a lot of stuff. And it's just like, whew, when you start to just let it go, it literally lightens your energy. You just feel lighter. That energetic weight loss that I was talking about, when you start to focus on who I get to become. Yep, Shayna says, that's what empowers me, is what I get to become. Yes, I love that. Start to focus on that. Start to really focus on that. Because when you keep that in mind, now there's a greater incentive to do this shadow work. And that's what I want you to remember. Remember to acknowledge if you're afraid. So I'm getting ready to conclude here, right? So if you're afraid of shadow work, the first thing you want to do is acknowledge. Acknowledge that something is there. Start to notice the things that trigger you, that trigger an emotional or physical response. Then you start to explore what shadow work is for you. What does that mean to you? What resonates with you when it comes to shadow work? Shadow work is not the boogeyman. Shadow work is an opportunity for you to heal and clear and understand these aspects of yourself that you don't like, the aspects of yourself that you hate, the aspects of yourself that you have forgotten. So it's not always about the trauma and the pain. It's also about the great parts of yourself that you don't have, that you might be in a state of low self-worth, and you don't even know. It's so deeply embedded in your unconscious self of all of your gifts and your abilities, but you're stewing in worthlessness, that they're stuck in your shadow, and you got to heal. You got to heal through that worthlessness in order to retrieve that, right? So you have to start exploring, acknowledge, then you start to explore and find what resonates with you. If, do your research, read the books if you want, watch the videos. What process resonates with you? Then, and then also not just looking at the stuff externally, do some meditation, do some quiet, just mindfulness work. What is spirit guiding you to do when it comes to the next phase of healing? Then the third part is looking at what you're afraid to let go of. What are you afraid to let go of? Acknowledge that, look at the root of that. Then once you realize what that is, then you start looking at what is it that you get to gain? What's the opportunities there? I did a massive declutter in December 2019. Awesome. I need to focus more on what I will gain instead of worrying about what I will lose. Absolutely. Absolutely do that. It's completely worth it. Because think about it, when you did the massive declutter in December of 2019, what did you gain by decluttering all of that? What did you gain? More space, more, just a clearer path to receive, clearing, just lighter energy. Just so think about those moments where you did let go of something and the positive outcome of that situation. And you're not going to always know how you're going to get to that next point. And I think that's one more thing I want to mention before I conclude here is sometimes you get fixated. It's like, okay, this is what I gained, but I want to see proof that I'm going to get it. I need the receipts right now. And it's like, no, it don't always work that way. You got to do this. You need to trust. You need to trust the process and the work. Yes, clearing the energy in my home felt lighter. Absolutely. And when you release all of that, then it's like, whew. Now I can start seeing a little clearer. We can't keep sifting through the fog anymore. That's after you've cleared all the stuff, right? Now you can see things clearer. Now things feel a little lighter, a little love and light for you right there. After you swept out all the cobwebs, after you dusted everything off, after you opened up a few of the blinds, you see what I'm saying? Then the illumination comes. So I hope that this live stream was something that you found valuable. And yeah, it's been a while since I've done a live stream on YouTube, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you think someone would benefit from this, be sure to share it and like this video if you liked it. And stay tuned because I do a new video on YouTube every Tuesday. And if you want to check out my podcast for those episodes that I mentioned, it's Fit Body, Fit Spirit, and I will be sure to post the link in the description. You can find it on all of your podcast platforms, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google. It's all on there. And you'll be able to catch up on season 1, and season 2 starts next month on the 3rd of December. I've been off season for the past couple of months, so I look forward to season 2 beginning. And it's really been awesome hanging out with y'all. Thank you for taking the time to join me on this live stream. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you thought. Be sure to share it and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. So I will see you all later. Have a good night.